Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse study of the entire Bible. Currently, we are in 2nd Chronicles, chapter 34. Now, we just got 3 more chapters to this book or letter. What is different about Chronicles? Now, some of the how the writings of the scriptures. I'm going to take the time to talk about this because this is kind of a good point here. Some of how the Bible is structured as we know it. Keep it in mind that the original studies or the writings were not, in a sense, compiled this way. Not the books themselves, okay, that as we're studying. So, for example, there were no chapter headings in verses, okay? Excuse me. And even titles, right? When we talk about the titles, okay, a lot of the times the titles themselves were derived by some type of, either they were kind of just given, or they were kind of gathered by some internal, some internal kind of message. Okay. Now, in the case of, like, for example, First and Second Samuel, that was the title given by the scholars or the translators. First and Second Kings, First and Second Chronicles, First and Second Kings. Those two titles kind of came out of the text itself. And, as you read in it, sometimes you see the name. Now, another thing about the structure of the both Old and New Testaments in our English translations, as they are arranged, to the best of their ability, they are arranged as a timeline. So you start from Genesis. Now, Genesis to Deuteronomy, of course, were basically 5 books that were written by Moses. But then as you kind of move on, you see the progression. So from Genesis all the way to Esther, okay, and I'm going to come back to that point because this is kind of where we are in our journey. So from Genesis all the way through Esther is more of a historical narrative. Now, as I said, we don't oftentimes know we don't oftentimes know who the author is, other than, like, for example, Moses. It's believed that Moses wrote the first 5 books. We don't kind of know some of the other writers, so like who wrote Joshua, we don't necessarily know. And there are a lot of kind of speculations. Some people believe Ezra, and we're just going to get to him in just a few studies. A lot of people believe that the scribe Ezra wrote, in a sense, other than the narrative of, other than the Moses first 5 books, that he wrote pretty much all of the narrative portion of the Old Testament. That is kind of weak, because even as we have read, there were times when the narrative would say, and such and such is as it is to this day. Now, the reason why then that kind of gets rid of the Ezra narrative, because Ezra is 70 years after the fall of Babylon. So if you say that a temple setting or something, or a temple condition was written up until that day, well, even now where we are, I'm going to explain in more detail in a moment, but even where we are right now, we're coming up on the Babylonian exile, where, remember, Israel and Jerusalem were completely destroyed. God wiped them out. Okay? So that's why I said sometimes in reading the narrative, it seems more likely that you had a collection of writings that were put together. So, for example, in Chronicles and Kings, a collection of writings that were put together. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm kind of going through this is because right now we're just as we read about the King Josiah. Let me kind of go up into my screen here. We're reading Josiah. We've read about him before. Now, he has a very extraordinary story. Okay. So let me do this. Let me go back, and I want to read something here. Let's see. I think I want First Kings. Okay, where am I at? Here. Okay. First Kings, chapter 13. All right. Now, this story, remember, came Jeroboam. This was the time of Rehoboam, Solomon's son. And this is the occasion where Rehoboam, Solomon's son, did not, the wisdom that his father had was not transferred to the son. He made a very foolish decision, which turned out to be actually God's judgment. In other words, God's decree or plan to split and divide the nation. So Jeroboam was chosen by God to lead the northern kingdoms. And remember the northern kingdoms. Hold on, let me go after this here now. Remember, this is our chart of the kings of Israel. Right here. I want you to read this here. Where are we at here? Come on, get me out. All right. So these are the kings of Israel. Now, as you can see right here, Jeroboam and Rehoboam, and then Rehoboam was the kingdom of the south, or Judah, which was given to Rehoboam, Solomon's son, by God, and then Jeroboam, he led what's called the secession of Israel, as you can see. Excuse me. There was a foolish decision by Rehoboam where he, out of pride and just stupidity, caused a division. But as you can see right here, this, excuse me, as you can see right here, so Jeroboam led Israel, and then Rehoboam led Judah. What I want to pay attention to is, look at this timeline here. Jeroboam, and then look at the date. He reigned from BC 976 to 954. Now I want you to keep that date, and then let's go down to Josiah, which he comes on the scene at BC 640. Okay. And he reigned from BD 640 to BD 690. Now, of course, remember, BC time is kind of interesting because look at Zedekiah 59. So start with this. If you start with the birth of Jesus, okay, and this is why kind of BC time is funny, because sometimes it's somewhat backwards. So BC time, start with the birth of Jesus. And then as you move back in time, that's how this time is counted. Okay? As you move back, if you can see my arrow here, you can see when we get to Zedekiah, okay? So if you start with the birth of Jesus and you go back in time, you would have come to 586. And then you keep going back in time to 597, and you keep going all the way up. Now, if you reverse that, now if we're going to go in time heading towards Jesus, we would go the other way, right? We would kind of come back this way. And so just 586 years as we're moving, subtracting that, 586, we would come to the birth of Jesus. Okay? So, all of this, the reason why I'm taking the time to talk about all of this is Josiah here, okay? Now, Jeroboam, even though God chose him, turned out to be one of the most wickedest kings that Israel ever had. He made 2 golden calves, because once the kingdom, the northern kingdom was kind of established, he figured, well, I don't want the people going to Jerusalem. And so he made 2 golden calves and put them at 2 different locations in the northern kingdom side, and led the people in gross sin. And so in verse 1 it says here, a man of God came from Judah to Bethel by revelation from God while Jeroboam was standing beside the altar to burn incense. The man of God cried out against the altar by revelation from the Lord, altar. This is what the Lord said. A son will be born to the house of David named Josiah. And he was sacrifice on you, the priests of the high places who are burning incense. Now, I want to stop there because notice that phrase. Now, I want you to see that here Josiah is is called by name. Okay, what? All right. Anyway, give me a hard time here. Excuse me. Josiah is come on, why are they doing this to me? Oh. All right, here we go. So Josiah, let me go back to my book here. When we come to this time, here we go. I got it. All right, when we come to now King Josiah, the time of King Josiah, there's a couple of things about this. The prophecy of Josiah, excuse me, I'm going to come out of this for a moment. Excuse me, the prophecy of Josiah was over 300 years. So this is one of the most astounding prophecies. Now, a lot of Bible critics attempt to make light of prophecy. Okay, they attempt to make light of prophecy. And my thing is you can't. And unlike predictions, okay, so this is at best prediction. So you hear about the Nostradamus who predicted things. In reality, he did not predict a thing. Predict a lot of stuff. What people do is they kind of add things to that. They supplement. They describe. So, for example, if you hear a prophecy, well, you know, in 500 years, I see the twin brothers burning in the sky. Well, naturally, you could add New York's 9/11, the trade towers, right? Now, whether that's what he meant or not, you don't know. See, you're adding that. You're looking at that saying, oh, it must be a fulfillment of that. Bible prophecy, okay, is exact when it wants to be exact. And here's an example of that, where Josiah, 300 years before he was born, was named. Okay? Now we're going to see some other prophecy as we move forward when we come to the writings of the prophet, Daniel, for example, in particular, the great image that Nebuchadnezzar saw, the prophetic picture. As you move through the book of Daniel, you see a prophetic picture. And you see it at different times too, during different kingdoms, okay? And that's prophetic. So the prophecies of Jeremiah, okay? So the prophecies of Isaiah, here's a good example. The prophecies of Isaiah excuse me, the prophecies of Isaiah were prophesied about 80 to 100 years before Jeremiah. Jeremiah prophecies is 70 years before Daniel. So again, remember, and when we look at the Bible, we oftentimes make a grave mistake about the Bible because we see here, a collection of books, but oftentimes what we don't realize is that that collection of books, it is a collection of books that's written over hundreds of years, periods of time. All right. So when we come to Josiah, the king Josiah here, let me go back to my chart for a moment. And where you're at, chart? Oh, okay. My computer's acting up here, but when we kind of look at the chart here, Josiah now is just, in terms of when we come to the end of his reign, he's just maybe 25 years before the fall of Jerusalem. Now, this prophetic word began in the prophecy of Isaiah. So go back to Hezekiah. And what you find is that this prophecy, about 80 to 100 years before, God began to warn them. Now, last time we read Manasseh sealed the doom. In other words, God said there's no turning back. The wickedness of Manasseh and the everybody during that time sealed the doom. Now with Josiah is, strange enough, it's going to be a small reprieve, a generation. And you can also say that it is the last good generation. The last generation before the brutal and cruel fall of Jerusalem. So Josiah, and I'll get into this. I'm gonna do a part 2 of this study because I wanted to do some background of this because this is time-wise. I want to kind of bring us up to speed here. That with Chronicles, what Chronicles going to do is, again, it's going to go to the fall of Jerusalem, and then we're going to have we're going to jump 70 years after the exile, and that I'll get more into that. But time-wise, I want us to be aware of this. So just 25 years, Jerusalem falls, but during this time, there is a, you can say revival, a short revival, one of the last generations where you see this, the Judah. Now, remember, Israel has already fallen, has been deported out of the northern kingdoms into the kingdom of Assyria. So now Judah is coming and will be destroyed. So I'm going to do part 2, guys, on this, and we'll study this and go into more of this. And again, I'm taking time only because the timeline here is important to understand. We've studied Josiah before, and we'll read through. There's a couple other things I'm going to pick up in the next study when I actually read it, especially about a prophetess. Okay, so add that to there. When people say that God cannot use women, we're getting that in the next study. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. As always, if you have a thought, a comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. See you in part 2 of this study.